What does the essence of childhood look like, truly? What form does it take? What sound do people hear? And what does it mean to the individual? The answer varies person to person. But if you were to ask me, this would be the first answer I give. Welcome back to Royal Autopsy, my friends. A series where I take a moment to rave and rant about games I have played, whether they be recent or old. The occasion today, my brethren, is very special. In 3 days, by the time this goes up, it shall be the 11th anniversary of this channel's founding. That's absolutely crazy. To think that the desire I had as an idiot kid to create a YouTube channel was just to have some liked playlists of things like Super Mario Bros. Z, somehow thinking that those liked videos contributed to my channel for whatever reason. Yeah, I was pretty dumb. Much less that I started off those early years with such quality content as this. Riveting gameplay and commentary. That ain't the important matter here, however. What is important is the following 11 years, the channel reboot on August 7th, 2016, and the progress we have made. Though relatively small we are, I still sincerely thank everyone, viewer or not, who has stuck by my side. And so, to celebrate the progress we have made, the years to come, as well as this very special day commemorating my life, I am putting the focus of today's Royal Autopsy on a game close to my heart. A game that may have set me on the path I am now, sweeping me up into the skies beyond through a gale of darkness. With such a nostalgia-bound game, the question must be asked whenever one of these sorts of reviews happen. Is it as good as I remember it being? Well, today, my fellow comrades and Kulu Crusaders, we shall answer that question. So, stock up on some hyper potions, revives, as well as ultra and timer balls, and get ready to brace the storm. Let's roll! "5 years ago, a tidal wave of chaos swept through the lands of Ore. A villainous organization by the name of Cypher plotted to take over the arid country and eventual world by mass-producing an army of heartless, machine-like Pokemon. Kidnapped by their subordinates, Team Snag'em, and artificially tortured, these Shadow Pokemon, as they were dubbed, proved to be an extremely efficient fighting force, and with their roots spread throughout the government and various seats of power, it seemed like nothing could stop them. However, feeling sickened by their practices, a young man named Wes defects from Team Snag'em, stealing their portable snag machine and setting fire to the old hideout. Wes sets off on a journey to uncover a massive conspiracy theory and stop Cypher in their plans. Ultimately, Wes, along with a living shadow Pokemon detector named Rui, bring light to Cypher's plans, and finally put the ringleader Evis behind bars. The day is saved. They are renowned as heroes of the region, and Cypher will never rise back again. Or so everyone thinks. 5 years later, after the Shadow Pokemon incident, the SS Libra goes missing, with officials scrambling for the truth and the whereabouts of the boat and Pokemon within. Along with that, a mysterious group of figures invade the Pokemon HQ and kidnap Head of Research Professor Crane for unknown reasons. Could it be that Cypher has returned after all this time? And if so, how even? That question is left in the hands of a new playable character, Michael, to find out on his journey through Ore. Long synopsis aside, I love this kind of direction for a Pokemon game. The idea that an organization is so determined to not go down without a fight, even after their plans might have been ruined, but they return in full force. It makes the crime syndicate feel like a bigger deal, with greater ambitions as well as backup plans should failure rear its ugly head. It's part of a reason why, among other things, Black and White 2 are remembered so fondly, I feel. Sure, they still at the end of the day go down to a kid, and I will admit Michael doesn't nearly have as much cool factor like Wes does, but hey, so does every other Pokemon crime organization. And the fact that the game just has these villains casually bring up how they close the hearts of Pokemon, and are planning to make the mysterious XD001 as the starting point for an army of unpurifiable shadows, not only make them as a much more competent threat compared to what was at the time a bunch of eco-terrorists and a mob boss, but it also makes the act of you taking back and helping these Pokemon all that more important. Which rolls us directly into the gameplay quite nicely. As expected of a Pokemon game, you run around in the overworld searching through towns and areas, finding items, solving puzzles, and battling trainers. When battling, however, all battles with the exception of the few wild spot encounters take the form of double battles just like Colosseum, already forcing the player to consider team comps and strategy in the long term due to the systems at play. Type matchups, stat modifiers, held items, abilities, and more will all be involved quite a bit. New to this and Colosseum, however, are the titular Shadow Pokemon, the main objective you're going for in the game, as well as the main source of Pokemon you'll be getting in your journey. Yes, that's right. In a decision that can be quite mixed, most of the Pokemon you can get on your team are first owned by other trainers. To add more options to your catalog, as well as to rescue all of the Shadow Pokemon, you must catch the opposing Shadow with your custom snag machine, a handy device that bypasses a safety function of Pokeballs and allows trainers to catch others' Pokemon. With whatever methods you can use, from whittling down their health, using status effects, as well as more effective balls, you must try to capture the opposing Shadow, all while making sure not to knock it out and survive. Combined with the previously mentioned factors, and even early game fights become stressful, nerve-wracking ordeals that will have you gritting your teeth and hoping that that one attack doesn't do too much damage. Which doesn't help considering yet another unique thing about Shadow Pokemon: Shadow moves. Shadow moves might as well be considered the equivalent of looking at a chessboard and then flipping it over to win the game. Because Shadow moves don't care what type you are, or how bulky your defense is, if you are not a Shadow Pokemon as well, it is always going to be super effective. Now granted, Shadow Pokemon still keep their original weaknesses intact, but considering your main goal is to capture them, and it is pretty wise to try and, in best case scenarios, not use super effective moves. Furthermore, compared to Colosseum Mons, Shadow Pokemon in XD have more than just Shadow Rush they can have, and by the time you get to the mid to late game, is where you're going to be running into some really nasty strategies and moves that will make you sweat like a bullet. Once caught, Shadow Pokemon need to be looked at and cared for, whether by being in your team or through the new Purification Chamber. Using Shadow Pokemon in battles, walking around with them, as well as using special cologne items will help this purification gauge lower, unlocking more of its moves in the process and allowing you to see its nature. Once the bar is emptied, it is up to you to purify the Pokemon and rid it of its Shadow status, allowing it to gain all that experience it has accumulated, as well as learn a move or two you don't normally see on them. Be warned though, for as you battle with Shadow Pokemon and as the bar gets lower, Shadow Pokemon can enter a state known as Reverse Mode, where in which they will take a bit of damage at the end of each turn, as well as refuse items as long as they are in it. That latter fact is especially crippling if the reverse state activates just when the Pokemon gets to low health, having to then use a cologne mid-battle or the call function to snap them out of a state, as well as lower the bar even further. Which Side note, the call function does serve another purpose outside of just simply knocking them out of reverse mode. If used on a Mon not in reverse mode, it instead raises your accuracy by 1 level. So if you're having a hard time hitting something, you might want to consider this as an option. The process for catching up and then purifying a shadow Pokemon can be long and grueling, especially up until the first Cypher admin. But I found that this particular use of story-to-gameplay integration really helped me feel a bond with my team. Because, you know, it has always been an idea through the various forms of Pokemon media that the bond between a trainer and their team is important, how many of them willingly sign up for it and respect their trainers, how that friendship is what allows you to overcome rivals such as Silver and Team Plasma, that they aren't just tools. And while it has taken major prominence in recent years through various gameplay functions and especially Astra Ninja, which I feel takes the concept in a way too literal shonen style, Gale of Darkness and Colosseum handle it in a realistic way that not only builds upon your goal to save all the Shadow Pokemon, but also expands upon it with the mechanic of forming relations with them. You are essentially, as cheesy as this sounds, rebuilding the bridge back to their hearts and allowing them to reconnect with the world. Through this roster of Shadow Pokemon, which is much greater than Colosseum's, as well as the select number of wild Pokemon you can get at a few spots, I feel a motivation, more than any other Pokemon game, to come up with new playthrough teams, try out Pokemon I never thought of before, and learn to appreciate them. Shoutouts to this playthrough especially go to Stracia for being an absolute demolisher when I got the ball rolling, Nevermore for being a tank on Citadark, even if the stage when you were a Duskull might have been a pain, and Quentin for being the embodiment of speed and helping me so much in getting a head start or catching a shadow. Of course, outside of the main campaign and stopping Cypher, there are plenty of other activities to do throughout. There are the various Colosseums, the 100 floor Mount Battle Trial, Battle Bingo over at the Real Game Tower, as well as these VR simulations, which round up to a grand total of 50 you can challenge by collecting battle CDs. Putting special attention on these battle CDs for a second, I love how around the first 40 almost act like puzzle battles, requiring you to do some ridiculous strategies that you would have never thought of prior to clear, while the latter 10 don't bother much with the strategy, and more so with your skill as a trainer and target prioritization. There are actually some things I learned in these CDs I didn't know until just this playthrough I'll let you know. It is absolutely insane. Wrapping up the gameplay section, let's actually talk about this game's difficulty for a second because it is quite interesting to say the least. While probably not as hard as Colosseum due to the plentiful amount of changes it brings, as well as a more varied roster, Gale of Darkness still wasn't afraid to whoop my ass without mercy even 16 years later. Signs of this can be seen as early on, with things like the first round of the Pyrite Colosseum, in which you can witness a rival trainer doing a fucking Destiny Bond strategy. This bitch! Combine some of these strategies with the stress of catching Shadow Pokemon as previously mentioned, and you are going to be taking some risks to try and survive, or just to make the other trainer not as scary. Like, take right here for instance. I am all ready to catch this Shadow Primeape, but for this split second, I forget about Gorgon's entire strategy of an Earthquake Protect combo, and the fucker KOs his own Pokemon because I didn't get rid of Ursaring! Cypher Key Layer and beyond, it especially gets troublesome, as you then start running into trainers who can have more than one Shadow on their team, dramatically raising the risk of fucking up one way or another. Shoutouts especially go to first round Snaddle and Cypher admin Ardos for being some of the hardest fights I encountered in my playthrough. Snaddle with his Weather team, use of Shadow Sky, and pretty resistant team comp resulted in my first game over ever, and Ardos for being the trainer I had to reset the most on, due to the sheer fact that his power was through the roof. I couldn't survive a few turns in the fight without one of my Pokemon going down because of his Alakazam, Kingdra, or Shadow Swallow. And by the end of your journey, it all culminates in one hell of an endurance round in the form of Citydark Isle, a gauntlet that houses almost over a third of the Shadow Pokemon in the game, rematches with all of the admins, and a final battle against the Grand Master where, oh boy, you have to contend with seven Shadow Pokemon in a row! 3 of which, including the damn legendary birds and Shadow Lugia, just before all of that! Now, you might be hearing all of this and think, from the way I'm talking, that this should go in the negative section, yeah? But, no. In fact, I really like the difficulty of this game. After almost 8 years of being essentially coddled with games like X and Y and Sun and Moon, broken EXP shares, hand-holding tutorials, and more, it feels great actually having to think about strategy, team comp, and more in the main campaign of a Pokemon game. It feels amazing having really tense moments that make me bet on one move, on one Mon, hoping that one ball snags the Pokemon. It feels refreshing, as masochistic as it sounds, having to be cautious and seeing that sometimes it just doesn't pan out. The fucking adrenaline I feel after having to go through Greevil once more and catching all of his Shadow Pokemon in one go, with all of the bullshit he pulls, is so gratifying and something I can only get from these 2 games. Because at the end of the day, it's all rooted in strategy and fair play. And hey, even if you accidentally knock out a Shadow, you can bet on Mirror B, the handsome and fantastic rascal he is, that should totally return, Game Freak, you cowards, to get those Shadows for you if that trainer can't be rematched. Speaking of the fantastic Mirror B, I want to talk about the presentation and overall quality of the game. Which, yes, means we're going to be talking about that quality animation, because of course we are! With Sword and Shield being the camel-breaking needle it is as a result of the straight-up lies and incompetence of Game Freak, many people were quick to draw comparisons primarily to the 3D Pokemon spin-offs to show the often drastic difference. A difference that's even more baffling considering the age of these games. Sure, we can always say that the spin-offs are of course going to be of a higher quality because it's being made by people more competent than Game Freak, but I don't think that should undermine the amount of work put in by Bandai Namco for the recent new Pokemon Snap and Genius Sonority for Colosseum and Gale. Battle environments, for the most part, are faithfully accurate to the overworld. Areas such as Phoenix City look gorgeous for the GameCube, Pokemon models look great and have differences in textures, and, of course, the animations involved from attacking, taking damage, and fainting are amazing. Some, such as Electrode and Slowbros, legitimately make me laugh with just how much flair and personality they have. Fluidity, character, impact, spectacle, it's all there. And when there's a powerful move that takes down over half of your health, it feels powerful. The attention to detail is so good that in the lower reaches of Citydark Isle, for example, the battle models of the Pokemon are actually impacted by the lighting created by the lava in the environment. A detail that, going off the standards of the main series, didn't need to happen, but is gladly appreciated and helps make the world feel more alive. Even the trainers and other entities have great animation and character involved with them, from throwing a snag ball, Mirror B and his awesome dance moves, as well as the introduction and defeat animations for various trainers like Greevil. All of this under a consistent 30 frames per second when in the overworld and battle, and an unlocked 60 in menus and the overworld map. That being said, there have been moments in my Let's Play where I noticed some frame drops, generally around the 28 range for a moment because of an attack or effect going on. Very rarely has it dropped lower, with the only instance I can think of being the Shadow Ladybug at the very beginning of the game, and the effect just not agreeing with the game for whatever reason. I will say that I have had a few crashes throughout my runtime, generally as a result of, from what I can gather, being inactive for too long on menus while I'm checking stuff in the background. Thankfully, you can save anytime you want, so if you want to feel more safe when playing, you can try and save every now and again to make sure you don't go back too far. Of course, a talk about a Pokemon game's presentation isn't complete without mentioning the music, and my god, Gale of Darkness has one of my favorite OSTs in all of Pokemon and, to a larger extent, gaming. Tracks like that of Shadow Lugia, Citadel Isle, the main title screen, and Cypher Key Lair capture the tensious, often weary moments of a journey perfectly, making you feel like you are in the heart of the beast or have seen something you shouldn't have. Other tracks like the Cypher Peon, Admin, Greevil, as well as intro and ending credits, give glimmers of hope and victory, even in the darkest of situations. Some, such as Greevil Redeemed, illustrate the plight of the characters in a perfect manner, and some, like Mirror B's theme, Pyrite Town, Galleon Port, and the Pokemon HQ, have an air of happiness and jovial energy to them, really making you want to join those Ludicolo in their dance number. All of them, regardless of style or genre, are an absolute bop to listen to, and I highly encourage everyone to check it out right now. A lot of praise has been thrown at this game, quite clearly illustrating the high regard I have for it. But was there anything in there that drew my ire? Well, let's talk about that. As mentioned before slightly when bringing up the gameplay mechanics, Gale of Darkness and Colosseum don't have every Pokemon up to Generation 3 in the main game. In fact, without the use of the GameCube link cables, you are limited to what the game gives you as Shadow Pokemon to use. While true, Gale does have more to obtain as well as a small selection of wild Pokemon, some people will of course not like this decision, similar to Black and White 1. Feeling that the available roster should be bigger or give them more options. I'm not bothered by this too much, both for the reasons already listed as well as others, but I know some people won't feel the same as me, so it's worth pointing that out at the very least. Another argument that can be made about Shadow Pokemon revolves around their distribution, and more particularly, Citadel Isle. Gale of Darkness has a grand total of 83 Shadow Pokemon to snag, with 36 of which sequestered purely on Citadel. That's over 40% of a Shadow Pokemon dex in one location. So, if you're really wanting, say, Manectric on your team as a speedster and Saz Inflictor, sorry bud, but you ain't getting him until the very end of the game. Quite literally, in fact, because his trainer Eldis is the final main obstacle to face before Shadow Lugia and Greevil. This can make picking up a new member of the team around that point extremely difficult, as Shadow Pokemon do not actively level up until they are purified, and also have to actually be engaged with in order to unlock more of their moveset. Shadow moves are super effective against anything not also a Shadow, sure, but consider again that this is Citadel Isle, so you are going to be facing a lot of trainers with Shadow Pokemon here. Combine this potential killjoy with the size of Citadel as a multi-floored gauntlet with multiple checkpoint stations, and this bit of the game could drag on for you. Speaking of dragging on, that brings me to another point about Gale of Darkness, the movement speed and backtracking. In Gale of Darkness, there are no bike tools you can use to fast move around the town, no instant fast map function to get from one area to another such as with Fly, no escape rope to get out of hideouts. What you see is what you get. This is the movement speed you're stuck with throughout the entire game, and every time you want to leave the area for something like a Pokespot, Mirror B, or even Purification, you have to drop whatever you are doing at that moment and haul ass back to an entrance. Now, a purification notice can be ignored. You can just wait till later until there's a batch ready to purify, and then head back to the Pokemon HQ or Relic Stone in Agate Village. But if you are actively trying to find a certain wild Pokemon, or need to refight Mirror B again in order to get a Shadow Pokemon you missed out on, then you can't delay. Which, when combined with the potential size of the area you are in, and how much you have to backtrack through to make it in time, can be a nuisance. Furthermore, this is all added on top of the moments in the game where backtracking is required to move forward, like when you need to backtrack to Gadeon Port in order to get bike parts to even enter the SS Libra because of a sand. Thankfully, unlike Colosseum, you don't need to backtrack even more to a PC in order to fucking save, so that's a mercy the devs were kind enough to not do. And while the game does offer up some side and post-game content to do, these various modes do have the chance to, of course, not be all that appealing to certain players, especially in the case of the Ore Colosseum, whose rounds lean pretty hard into competitive, or the 100 stage trial of Mount Battle. Now, Mount Battle itself is not bad. I like the idea of an extra challenge area such as this. There is a worth in going to it for various rewards and NPCs like the Move Relearner and Forgetter. It's a neat grinding spot if you need it, and you can teleport out of Mount Battle or even swap out party members once you reach a checkpoint every 10 battles. What is a little scummy, however, is the perfectionist route of Mount Battle. Because in order to get the most out of this optional challenge, you don't need to just clear all 100 battles. Oh no siree! You need to clear all 100 of these battles from the very start without changing party members once. Only then can you lay claim to the ultimate prize, a choice between one of 3 Johto starters, each with their type's equivalent of Hyper Beam. Oh, and guess what, boyo? If you want all 3 starters from the Mount Battle Challenge, you need to do this fucking gauntlet like that 3 times. Sorry, but no thanks. Once is just fine enough if you ask me. Even under the excuse of it being an optional challenge, the idea of going through all those battles over the span of multiple hours 3 times over just to get all of the starters does not sound fun in the slightest, and I highly discourage anyone from doing that unless you are a supreme masochist. The last point I want to bring up for this section isn't technically even a negative, but is a fascinating bit of development that a lot of people really want to happen. So, I think we can all agree that Mr. Varric being revealed as the head honcho of Cypher, Grandmaster Greevil, was something we all saw coming, yeah? Look at this totally not suspicious person draped in purple and black that has 2 bodyguards following him around, And outside of optional visits to the Krabby Club or his boat where you can talk to him, you only encounter him one other time before the grand reveal. While I like the talk down he gets from Eldest after the final battle and everything surrounding it, it is anticlimactic. Especially if you played Colosseum first to just have this kid come along and be the one to end Cypher, with no mention of Wes or Rui anywhere. The idea that Evis was just the Ore branch leader of Cypher, and that Greevil was the global leader, the true mastermind calling the shots. Well, supposedly, Mr. Varric wasn't planned to be the head of Cypher. For what if I told you that Wes's original defection from Team Snag'em might not have been as pure as we might have thought? The original story draft of Gale proposes that Wes, whether knowing that he was just there as a valuable trainer that would be sooner or later replaced, or through cruel moral corruption, would have come to be the new head of Cypher in the 5 years since, transforming it into a much more efficient crime organization. So, when the reveal of the Grandmaster's identity comes to pass after Gorgon's first fight, it wouldn't be Greevil that Michael would have to face, but rather the proclaimed hero of Ore, who uncovered the first Shadow Pokemon incident instead. There is no mention of where Rui would be in the original draft from what I can see, but Game Freak scrapped the idea, feeling that this twist would have made the game too dark, and more importantly, would have undermined the journey the player made in Colosseum, especially future playthroughs. So they decided to scrap all that, and now we have Greevil as the main antagonist and final boss. On the one hand, I feel that a story beat like this would have been so fucking good for a Pokemon game to explore, and would have definitely wrapped up the Shadow Pokemon duology in a neat little bow by bringing back the original protagonist. Hell, I'd argue that such a twist might not be too dark nowadays, especially considering some of the stuff Pokemon has gone away with in recent gens, and how many are dying for something like that. At the same time, however, I do understand that second concern, and how it would impact people's perception of Colosseum, perhaps even replayability. Maybe instead of having him be the final boss and leader of Cypher, why not let West take on the role of Red from Gold and Silver as this super secret optional boss at the end of, say, the Ore Colosseum? This, plus some mention or sight of Rui, would have helped to at least confirm the presence of these two vital characters in the Ore Shadow Chronicles. But with all that said, I think it is time we wrap up this video. Time is a funny thing. Every day, every second, every step of the lives we take is persistently followed by the past, present, and future simultaneously. To gaze up at the stars and imagine the future, to get stuck in the moment and become indecisive, and to recall better days from moments past. Time also allows for wisdom and hindsight. And I'd like to think I did a good job for this video factoring that. As a game so integral to me in gaming, there is of course going to be some nostalgia chained to the product. Feelings that I can't so easily shake off, and are easy to get lost in. I could easily allow myself to just not say anything bad about this game and think of it as perfect, but it isn't. Nothing is. The beautiful thing about time is that it allows for newfound appreciation. It empowers you to look at something from a wiser standing, admit to some of the flaws it might have, and cherish what you love most even more. There were moments where backtracking got irritating, where I would have wished that this one-shot of Pokemon might have been earlier in the game, where I well and truly got my shit pushed in by certain trainers, or where I even pondered on the alternative timeline that would have been if they did go with the West plotline. But all of that just made me love everything else in a whole new, definable manner, and even pay attention to some aspects about this game I never noticed before. It's for all these reasons and more that I always look forward to this game, no matter how many times I've already gone through it, whenever I am in the mood. A game that I can actively be greeted with open arms by, all while new experiences and lessons unfold. It's a damn shame that Nintendo, and to a much bigger extent Game Freak, feel content with leaving Gale and Colosseum on old hardware left to dry, giving it barely the smallest honorary mention when celebrating the franchise. There are clearly new fans who want to play these games, Game Freak. People who would spend money to re-experience a game like this on the go or at home with updated graphics and quality. To see such an obscure, cult classic step of the franchise be given the attention it deserves. Even if it isn't a third game about the return of Cypher, with more Pokemon from the newer generations, with Ardos as the new head, a port, re-release, or even collection would be fantastic. It's all especially saddening considering the current downward spiral Pokemon has been in for many people as of late, all while Game Freak is perfectly complacent with often doing the bare minimum, lying to their audience, unwilling to delay games that clearly need more time just because of profits, and regressing 5 steps back for every 1 step forward they make. all because it is Pokemon. But, that is an entirely separate can of worms I am not going into at the very end of this video. I digress. So, if you are feeling a little down about modern Pokemon like me, and want to experience this game for the first time, or are just wanting to have some fun and even challenge, I recommend you try out Gale of Darkness and even Colosseum. Although I do consider Gale the technically superior game for a multitude of changes, Colosseum still has quite a bit to offer on its own, especially if you are looking for a challenge. All of this considering if you have the means available to even play it, unfortunately. Gale of Darkness and Monster Hunter Tri made me who I am today, and I wouldn't have picked any other games in the world for them. I have been the Monarch of Dragons, and thank you all for the support. You guys are part of a reason why I keep pushing onwards in the first place. I do mean that sincerely. Thank you all. I hope you all have a fantastic day, / night, wherever you live. And until next time, peace and Kulus Volt!